The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Good morning, CJ. Your mic is messed up.
No, it's not. Not anymore.
Okay.
Good morning, Chip.
Good morning. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And we have a new introduction, I see. Very nice.
Well, we worked on it a little bit.
Space age.
Yeah, it kind of gives us the, right exactly where we are. Plus, our commentary section now is happening in our new lift into the new world, for the lack of a better expression. So,
well,
we had a fun night last night, though, I'll tell you. It was very interesting. Wish you would have been there, Chip, but sparring does take its toll on it. So
yeah, I was having fun watching people punch each other, getting ready for MMA matches. But sometimes you wish you could throw some of the city officials in there and let them duke it out. Well,
I'll tell you, it was very, very interesting, especially where I thought that we were going to have some duking it out. And a friend of ours, part of the Unholy Trinity, Mr. Dan Robelard, really got into a tizzy before the city council meeting. And there's a gentleman who's running for city council who I don't think will see the light of day if Danny has his way. So, but you always gotta love Danny, because he gets his message out and he makes sure people know it right away. But let's get right on to what happened initially at the city council meeting. First off, there was no citizens input last night. And in reviewing it, I find, and in discussion with the city clerk, citizens input only happens half an hour before the finance committee meeting and a half an hour after the finance committee meeting, but not during any regular city council meeting. Kind of sounds like the school committee a little bit, which says you can only talk if it's on the agenda. So that's okay. We'll deal with that. But I think it was interesting to see the same old failed administration go into the city council. The vote yesterday was 6-2 for Joe Camara to be city council president, which he proved himself over and above last year of being somebody who should not be in that office, especially when you can't run a meeting and you have no idea what Cushing's rules of order are. That was 6-2, and it was Mayoza and Pereira for Linda Pereira for city council president. But Linda knew beforehand that the votes were stacked against her. And then the city council vice president was Ray Mitchell again 6-2, where Correa and Mayoza voted for Mike Mayoza. But again, the vote was stacked, and we knew that. But I think the biggest faux pas, the biggest mistake that could have happened was when Joe Camara thanked Will Flanagan for his term in office. I thought the room was going to just drop. It was unbelievable. It was the biggest mistake I think he's ever made, and I don't think he'll ever make it again. But it was a joke. It was a joke at the highest degree.
Well, I don't agree with it, but I can see him thanking someone for their service. I mean, they did serve the city. What they got out of it, on the other hand, you have to put that basically on our Spindle City scale. But the reality is, some people, they have the belief that anybody who serves the city, if it's good or bad, should be thanked for taking the time to serve the city. I agree partially with that. I think that people should be commended for taking the time out of their schedule to do this. And but then again, if they do a horrible job and they basically pillage the city while they're in there and create and wreak havoc, I'm not sure I would make this into a big deal and say, thank you for your service. I mean, especially full-time positions like mayor and things. They're fully paid. They have benefits. And, city councilors, on the other hand, it's kind of a part-time job, even though they do get paid. And they're actually getting paid probably almost as much for that part-time job as some of the people are making in Fall River, working in some of these places, giving out coffee and donuts. But the fact is, they did do it, and they do give some of their time. But what disturbs me about this is they're quick to thank each other. But the fact is, what disturbs me is they don't seem to grasp the fact of who they represent again. I heard, you can confirm this, CJ, that Joe Camara was making seating arrangements at the city council, telling the public where they could and couldn't sit in their house. Now, if that is true, and you can confirm it since you were there, that disturbs me, because I don't think that any city councilor, president, vice president, or any councilor, or any city official has the right to tell people where to sit in a public meeting.
Well, and this did happen, and interestingly enough, our director, or our current director, was present when this happened, and these seating arrangements were being made because Pat Casey felt uncomfortable sitting next to certain individuals. Well, Ms. Casey, if you can't sit in the city council chamber with the general public, maybe you should resign. There are police officers present. I have very serious doubts that anyone's going to do anything to harm you. Unlike the commentary that you gave to several citizens in Fall River regarding me personally, yes, I did hear them. I don't turn around and say, you can't sit next to me because you make comments. Hey, people make comments. But for Joe Camara to say, you need to move, and our director turned around and said, why is this seat saved? And he says, well, no. She goes, who's it for? Well, nobody. I'm nobody. And she sat down and she stayed there the entire meeting. So I don't know how comfortable she felt with that, but now that we're uncomfortable and it's not all warm and fuzzy, we can't go to a city council meeting?
No, well, kudos to our director. She's never had a problem being speaking her mind, so that's good. But the fact is that who are they to say that we have to have an insulated environment for them? As a matter of fact, it should be just the opposite. I'd like to see it run like the House of Commons, where you can scream at them and scream at each other, and let's let it go, and let's call spades a spade. And the reality is that this gets back to the president of the city council. Rather than be the president and maintain order and decorum in the meeting, he decides to move people around like he's playing Chinese checkers. Well, again, that's not doing your job, Mr. President. If she's uncomfortable and people are saying things that are disturbing her thought process, if she has any, rather than reading from anything that any sitting mayor sends to her, it's up to her to say, Mr. Chairman, these people are speaking loud enough for me to hear. Would you please maintain order in the chamber? And that's the way it's supposed to be done. But, we pay for that building. It's our tax dollars. We pay them. Who are they to tell us where to sit in our building? That's our city hall. That's our government center, not his. And for his own convenience, because he can't maintain order, he's going to try to make people sit in certain areas. That's, to me, I hate to say it, but that's discriminatory.
I agree, Chip. I mean, I think it's gone beyond ridiculous. And I mean, the fact that they re-elected this man as city council president shows that even the city council has no clue how a meeting's supposed to be run. They absolutely have no clue. And I actually called out a city councilor yesterday, and I said to that city councilor, I said, look, every time that city council president decides to open his mouth from the podium, somebody needs to stand up and say, point of order, Mr. President. If you wish to make a commentary, you need to resign the podium and let the vice president take over for you to make your commentary. But he does it every time. He violates the law because it's also in the law every time, does it regularly. So obviously this man not only doesn't know how to run a meeting, he doesn't know how to read. I mean, it's sad.
Well, obviously, you know.
I'm getting a little emotional.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but I mean, it is a source of irritation, especially to people like you and I who have been in meetings and chaired meetings and had to do things by the rules. Whenever I made a commentary as the president of a union, I had to give the gavel up. I had to pass the gavel and speak as a member, not as the president. You can speak to make clarifications on motions. You can speak, you can speak in general terms about issues. But if you're going to make a commentary, a personal commentary, you can't use your position as chairman. You have to give that position up and go down to the well, as they say. And this bothers me. But it's not surprising when you look at the rest of everything. If you can't find anywhere, at least one and possibly multiple violations of parliamentary procedure in every single city council meeting, you're not paying attention, because it seems that after, I've been watching these meetings for decades, they still don't know that a motion to table is non-debatable. I mean, somebody makes a motion to table and there's an hour debate afterwards. Every council's got to be on camera. It's a non-debatable motion. And this and priority emotions and all the other minutia that we won't bore our audience with. But the bottom line is that if you're running a meeting, especially a government meeting, a meeting that's supposed to be representative of the people, at least run it like a real meeting. If you're going to have rules, abide by them. Or the next time they have a baseball game, maybe they should run up the third base line instead of the first base line. I don't know, but that's the way it is. So,
you have to laugh about it. You really do, because it's
to keep from crying.
Yeah, that's true. But it just gets to be ridiculous. And then people say, why do you get all upset? I mean, I don't get upset. To me, this is just a joke. This is it's like watching Monty Python. It gets to be very good. But, moving on a little bit, just to show how much that Fall River really values citizens' input. On Monday night, they had a school committee meeting, and people said, why weren't you there? Why am I going to show up? I can't talk. Because you can't. Unless the item that you wish to speak about is on the agenda, you can't talk about it. And, they all sat there, and then they all said, well, there's not enough parents. Well, parents don't want to bother anymore because they feel like they're talking to the wall anyhow. So, but that's, this was repeated again on Tuesday night. Citizens couldn't talk because the finance meeting wasn't held. But what did happen, which I thought was very interesting, was on the day of the city council meeting, the sixth floor sends down a memo asking for 2 new positions to be added into ordinance. See, this is the problem. We create jobs, put them in ordinance, and then we're stuck with them for duration of the world. So now Fall River needs a chief operating officer, which, by the way, comes under the same contract that a city administrator does. And we need a special assistant to the mayor in order to take financial reins of Fall River. I don't know about that. I mean, it's a little iffy to me. I mean, it gets to be a little questionable on where we're doing, because I remember a mayor not 5 years ago who kind of did the same thing. I mean, do you remember this?
Yeah, well, when we talk about city council being in kind of, not paying attention to the rules and not paying attention to what goes on either, it seems that no matter what we do, it's the same old, same old. I'm not going to make any, I'm not going to rush to judgment, but I will say that I am not really happy with what I'm seeing so far. The fact is that you don't get your financial house in order by spending more money and creating more positions without eliminating positions. Had he sent down something to say, I'm creating these 2 new positions while I'm eliminating these 4 positions, and then these people are going to be in charge of the overseeing of the government. You know, I am so tired of hearing COO, Chief Operating Officer, and then they say, well, businesses have it. Well, how many times do you clueless politicians have to realize this is not a business, it's a city. It's a city. And the problem is you want to convince people that it's a business so you can create all your high-paying jobs like COO and make COOs in the middle schools. Give me a break. Middle school needs an operating officer. You've got principals, vice principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents. Jesus, how many people do we need to oversee that department? It's the same thing with the city. We need a chief operating officer. We got a fire chief. We got a police chief. We got a DPW head. We've got a head in every department that's getting a salary to run those damn departments. That's like putting a fire chief on every apparatus. You have one chief to oversee all the apparatus at a fire. It's like we've got all these department heads. Well, you want a COO, get rid of all the department heads. What the hell do we need them there for? Why do we need all these tiers? Except to spend money. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's a waste. And it sends the wrong message already. And I hate to say it, as I said, I'm not going to rush to judgment. I'm going to wait to see what happens. But creating new positions, and some of these positions, to me, are duplications. Has he eliminated and we also heard that Perry Long's job has been filled. So that's almost a $100,000 position. That's a firefighter and a half, or a police officer and a half. To do what? To pay somebody almost over $90,000 with his other perks, almost $100,000 to go meet with the neighborhoods? You know, I remember years ago when we only had a mayor. Then we got an administrator. Then we created the city administrator, which basically relieved the mayor of virtually all his administrative duties. And now we're going to have all these other jobs. So, you know, talk about compartmentalization. They complained. I remember years ago when they complained about unions doing this. When they had the unions got like in Raytheon, they had a guy, if you had to move a cable from one place to another, it was in the contract that somebody from some department had to, you couldn't carry it, even if it was 2 feet. And they're going, this is a waste of money. Well, guess what? Mayor Sutter, this is a waste of money. We've got enough damn management. What we need is a streamlined government. We need less people, not more people. You know, we're not going to fix our problems in this city by creating more jobs. We are not an employment agency. This is a city. You know, the function of a city is to provide services. And we don't need a ton of people to provide those services. We got Kenny Pacheco running community maintenance, Department of Community Maintenance. We've got Chief Averis running a fire department. We got Chief Racine running a police department. They're all getting a salary. Let them do their job. How many people do we need to oversee the overseers? This is ridiculous. It's more political patronage, and it's wrong.
It's funny though, because you know we see this over and over again, and let's look at DCM. Okay, DCM has Kenny Pacheco, who I mean is overworked. There's no question about it for the amount of work he does, and he does a lot of extra work on committees and everything else. But he's got multiple assistants. Doing what?
Yeah, they just created 2 new management positions a year or 2 ago in the DCM.
Right.
So he's got 2 new supervisors. So he's got double the amount of supervisors he had before. So as I said, how many supervisors do we need? We have all chiefs and no Indians.
Yeah, and the thing is though that so much so that now, according to Ken Pacheco last night, the Fall River Housing Authority has contracted DCM to pick up recycling. But the Fall River Housing Authority is already paying for a private contractor to pick up their trash, which included their recycling. So my question is, why does the Fall River Housing Authority need to give money to Fall River for trash pickup, which they already have a contract for? And isn't this mismanagement? Or is this just a way to make sure that the pay-as-you-throw ripoff is sustained by getting other functions in there to pay for the shortfall that we know exists that everyone lies about?
No, this is another way to rip the taxpayers off again. But nobody will care about the housing authority, they say, because the housing authority isn't city. It's federal. But it's tax money. Who funds the housing authority? It's not a private entity. The fact is that it is a public entity. The fact is that means the public pays for it. They are already paying to have their trash removed, including their recyclables. So why would we? Number one, I don't even know how you can contract the city of Fall River. They're not a private entity. It's not a company. It's not like you're going to BFI or Cleanways or somebody to contract. The city of Fall River is a public entity. The DCM is funded by tax money. Since when can they enter into private contracts? Because it's not a private entity. Well, that entity's already having its trash picked up. It's another way to siphon money, tax money, our hard-earned tax dollars away. Like, we're paying 3 times to pick up our trash. First we paid for the bar. First we paid DCM to pick it up. And we paid for the barrels. Now we're paying for the bags. Now in a housing authority, we pay for the housing authority with our tax money. We're paying for a private contractor to pick up their trash. And now we're paying the DCM to pick up the trash that should be picked up by the other person.
Right. And here's the funny part about it. I guess the city's doing this regularly and concurrently. So my thing is this. Because pay-as-you-throw, as you remember, is supposed to be put into an enterprise fund. If the city of Fall River DCM wants to act like an enterprise account, like the water department, then cut them off from the city budget. Take their money away. They have to generate their own income.
Sounds like a plan to me.
It sounds like the right way to do it, but then people won't get what they want. So, but again, bring some common sense things to the table, and you're a negative Nelly. So,
would you? Well, let's try to put this in perspective. Let me give you a hypothetical. If you were the head of the Fall River Housing Authority and just got your salary elevated to somewhere in the vicinity of $165,000, which is more than double what you were getting as a state representative, would you complain when the guy who pulls the strings for the housing authority ultimately? Are you going to complain when you got your job politically? That's the problem. The problem is all these politicians and all these jobs, that's the way the game is played. Just like the job at BCC for $120 that you don't have to show up to double your pension. Just like the jobs they get everywhere. They always find a place to fall. They always find a place to fall. If they spend, they talk about the system, the pension system. There's the problem. The problem that these people who have been living off the public dole their whole life, taxing us to death, they leave there and they get these positions. And when they leave, their relatives get the positions. You wonder why people get frustrated? Well, guess what? There you go.
And here's the thing that kills me, this just popped into my head. We have members of the community, citizens, which scream, rant, and rave about people who are on welfare. They obviously don't know what the political world is, because all the political world is public welfare under the guise of a job.
I don't know if you're right. And the thing is, it's like, it's funny because, you remember the old, was it the Golden Toilet Award they used to give out for the worst federal mismanagement, when they were paying like $800 for a $20 toilet seat or something like that. Yeah. When that's what the federal government does to to an obscene level that that was one of the problems. I remember a debate many years ago in a course I took at college about people having a perception. They can perceive that somebody, living in a welfare house gets a block of cheese that costs about $1, for them to get it the way they procure it. But they steal literally millions of dollars. Politicians misappropriate and steal millions of dollars. And nobody says anything. You're right, it is welfare. Just like many years ago, there was not many years ago, it wasn't that many years ago, but it was a few years ago. There was a senator in Washington who voted for the pharmaceutical bills, and there was a very controversial bill, and he carried that bill through, and then he got voted out of office ultimately. And what happened to him? The pharmaceutical company gave him a position as a consultant for $1 million a year. We wonder what's wrong with our government. The problem is the government's what's wrong with the government. And the problem is that, I used to be absolutely against term limits. I think we have to impose them because most of these people, they can't do what we did here. If we voted these clowns out every other term, we wouldn't have the problems we have. But you know something? We're as responsible because we leave people in office forever.
That's because they get a chow mein sandwich. But it's true. And I'm really leaning more and more towards term limits. If a two-term period is good enough for the governor, it's good enough for the president of the United States, it should be good enough for every other elected official in the state. And they scream, rant, and rave, well, we can't gain power and we don't get any position on committees nationally. Hey, you know what? It's not about power. The House of Representatives was created for 2-year terms so every member of the community could serve a term in Congress. It's become a living wage for these people because once they're in, they get that salary for the rest of their life.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems. They talk about welfare. Do you think it's right that a congressman that serves one day gets health care for the rest of his life, the best, tax-free? He also gets a pension. These people, they don't have to be vested. These people get pensions, they get all these benefits, and many people don't realize that Congress doesn't even have to abide by the laws of the United States. They create their own law. They are exempt. We do have a class of nobility in this country, and it's called our politicians.
Yes, this is true. But it's frustrating. And when you look at what's happening already in week 2 of Fall River government, and for somebody to turn around and tell me yesterday at the city council chamber, you've got to give them a chance. The wounds are still fresh. We're still bleeding. The wounds haven't healed. We're still bleeding. And it's bad enough that the community itself is turning on itself. But the message that was sent out by the community in this whole process has already reached deaf ears. They have ignored what the people have done. They have said, you don't matter.
Well, let's hope, as I said, I'm not going to rush to judgment, but I will say this. We are watching, and if it continues, there's going to be problems, and the fact is, we are not off to what I consider a good start. It looks like more of the same, and that's not acceptable.
No, it's not. Definitely not acceptable. But hey, what are you going to do? It is what it is.
It's the Riv.
It's the Riv.
It's the Riv.
And that's what we deal with.
But we have a difference now. We have gotten people engaged, and people are still fired up, and maybe the wounds will heal, but hopefully their engagement in the process will never go away. And you know something? Hey, there's an election in less than a year.
That's true. And I hope and pray that the people of Fall River realize that, you can get rid of him now. So, with the next election, if he doesn't do his job the way you want him to. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.